prominent forms of distrust. And therefore, everybody distrusting each other doesn't help to forge a purposeful and productive partnership. So we need to redefine our partnerships in a manner that this distrust is broken, and we can join forces not only in a transparent manner, but in a trusting manner. And this is where I think we need to redefine what PPPs are. I know PPPs have become somewhat the flavor of the day over the last 2 decades, but very few people have actually set up a normative framework to define PPPs. Very few people have set up a proper regulatory framework and accountability matrix for PPPs. And therefore, even well-intentioned PPPs come under fire because of this ambiguity and vagueness about PPPs. And the expectations on both sides sometimes remain unfulfilled, leading to a questioning of PPPs as an overall concept. And I think it's important that we redefine PPPs. In fact, if you look at the civil society activists, define PPP as partnership for private profit. That's an element of cynicism in it. But there are definitely PPPs that have been remarkably successful in this country. I mean, people are fond of putting a number of PPPs in various areas, including the 108 program, of ambulance emergency services, or the Chiranjeevi scheme in Gujarat. But I would even talk about something like the National Blindness Control Program. I mean, how could the program have not succeeded if the private sector had not participated in that very actively and delivered a huge amount of eye services across the country? How do we expect tuberculosis control program to succeed in this country, and how do we prevent multi-drug resistant tuberculosis from emerging if the private sector does not engage actively? So we do require an active and enthusiastic participation, but under clearly defined conditions. And therefore, I think PPP should be actually redefined as partnership with a public purpose. So let's first redefine the public purpose, and then say, okay, we are all working towards this public purpose. And once we take that attitude, then actually the partnerships can be immense. They can be partnerships with the government and the private sector, partnership with the government with NGOs, partnership with the private sector with NGOs, and they can be partnership between private sector groups as well as between NGOs, because ultimately you're coming together for serving a public purpose which is very clearly defined. And therefore, once the public purpose is defined, like for example, Mr. Desai took the example of a health workforce being developed, and say, okay, it's not merely the process of developing the health workforce or releasing a few products into the market, but ultimately are these products aligned to the needs of the domestic market in an equitable manner, in an efficient manner. So once you define the public purpose and say that this is what we are going to guide our efforts towards, and this is what we are going to be held accountable for, then it becomes easier to look at it. So I think, therefore, once we start engaging in that process, start with the public purpose first, and rather than with inputs first, then we start working backwards, and then say that this is how we are going to establish a partnership. Then it becomes easy to develop the trust as well as accountability, which breeds further trust. Now, in terms of health planning, there is a great deal of disconnect between various partners that are required. Unless we have coordinated planning, we are going to see the kind of things that Mr. Desai talked about, where the private sector does engage, does have health professional training programs, but ultimately the products are not there because the government has not created the requisite demand. We have found that in the area of public health, for example, it's, obviously public health is one of the most critical elements in this country. It has long been neglected, both as a training discipline and as a practical area of application, for a variety of reasons. That's why we find that many of our health programs are suboptimal in terms of their performance and delivery, even at the level of resources currently allocated. And there is no guarantee that resources when injuries are going to be optimally utilized because of lack of public health expertise in planning as well as program design, delivery, and evaluation. So the Government of India has rightly come to the conclusion that we must have much greater public health expertise, both at the level of public health professionals who are well trained and public health functionaries who are well skilled, and that these people will have to be developed in large numbers and appropriately deployed in central and state health services as well as in the private sector and NGOs as well, wherever opportunities arise. But when this Public Health Foundation of India, for example, was set up as a public-private initiative in 2006, we had this big debate preceding that. as to whether it's worthwhile setting up institutions of public health training, since there are no demarcated positions in any of the health services other than Tamil Nadu. So where is the absorption capacity? If there is no absorption capacity, why will people come to take these courses? So what's the point of setting up these programs? We argue that there is a huge latent demand which is not being unmasked. And the latent demand will never manifest itself if there is no supply chain evident. Because nobody is going to start setting up public health cadres if there are no institutions to train public health professionals. So we said demand and supply will have to be driven simultaneously. So let us set up institutions and simultaneously try and catalyze demand. And that has worked to some extent, and also the added value of seeing public health training improve health system performance as evident in Tamil Nadu has also helped to give confidence to the planners that it's an important investment. And therefore, we have seen how now in the 12th plan, that the clear mention that public health cadre and health management cadre must be developed, and now the center will assist the states in developing everywhere across the country. So we must work towards that end with a clear plan of action, and then see how we can actually generate demand at the same time assure supply in a very carefully planned manner. And I believe unless we put our heads together, even in the planning process, and see where the road will end, we are not going to be really proceeding on the correct track. Of course, there are many areas where public health, where in the industry, government, as well as academia and other partners, including the NGOs, can come together very clearly for health. Mr. Disraju has clearly mentioned the area of technology as a very important area, and I know Dr. Gupta is a very ardent advocate of a major technology transformation plan. Clearly, in a country where we have great limitations of health workforce, inability of the health services to have universal outreach at this moment, the ability of technology to increase outreach as well as effectiveness of delivery is immense, and I think we are only beginning to recognize its potential, and we ought to be able to utilize it, whether in terms of mHealth services, e-health, telemedicine, all of these which are frequently talked about but not fully developed yet as programs. And critical, of course, is empowering non-physician healthcare providers at front lines. Since we are not going to be able to deliver trained as well as willing doctors to rural areas and to the extent that's required, we must also recognize that we probably need to develop a large number of non-physician healthcare providers who can deliver many of these services effectively without having to be doctor dependent. And it's not a question of trying to say that rural areas can do with second-hand kind of providers. Even urban areas, there is no reason why primary care cannot be well served by trained non-physician healthcare providers. All over the world, we see nurse practitioners and others managing vascular clinics very effectively, and in fact, blood pressure management in hypertension clinics in the UK, there have been trials which show that nurses actually deliver much better than physician-run clinics. Nurse-run clinics have better outcomes than physician-run clinics, partly because nurses are more empathetic, more communicative, and lastly, they follow guidelines much better. Doctors are anarchists by nature, so they're less likely to follow those guidelines. But nevertheless, the lesson is there that we do require to invest substantially in non-physician healthcare providers. And how do we do that? We set up decision support systems, we set up point-of-care diagnostics, and we use technology very effectively for that. And indeed, of course, we must also recognize that we cannot be only dependent on technology and ignore public health. Science discovers, technology develops, and public health delivers. If you do not have a competent public health course, then you will find a technology pileup. You will find that even routine immunization will not be properly delivered. Leave aside modern technology, more modern technology. So you need to build in all of these very effectively together so that you can develop a very robust health system which meets the needs of this country. Then comes the area of drugs. Of course, drug development is absolutely important, very critical for this country, and we are now looking at essential drugs being supplied free of cost to the government and the policy that's already been announced. We must ensure that there is adequate availability of affordable drugs of good quality. And here, there could be differences of opinion depending upon who the producers are, because in a competitive market, obviously you are all competing for the same pie, a larger share of the same pie. But there are areas where there is clear convergence. After all, you ought to be able to look at how to remove spurious and falsified drugs from the market, because they are absolutely injurious whoever the manufacturer is. And why do we not collaborate in setting up strong drug testing laboratories, in setting up strong regulatory systems? Because one of the major problems in India has been the lax regulatory environment in multiple areas. And health has been a particular area of weakness, whether it is drug regulation or regulation of clinical practice. We are not suggesting that there should be a policed environment, but we are suggesting that there should be an environment in which safety and competence are assured. And we require that whether it is standard management practice guidelines or safe drugs. So these are the kind of things that we ought to be able to collaborate much more on, to ensure that we have a system that is efficient and functioning. And we ought to be able to collaborate on issues like equipment and devices, as Mr. Desiraju said. Again, we have a situation where there is no clear-cut regulatory policy for devices. So far, the tendency has been, rather lazily I must say, put devices under drugs and say that device testing also should be done like drugs. They're poles apart. So you ought to be able to look at better regulatory systems and have a proper regulatory system for devices. So these are the kind of things that we should be demanding, at the same time collaborating upon. In terms of innovation, I think there's a tremendous opportunity for innovation. Innovation not only in terms of technologies, but in delivery systems. I think India can be a crucible of innovation. In fact, the European Union is now soon it's going to hold a major meeting in Europe, in which it's asking for how West European Union and India can collaborate in health. So this is an area that we ought to be looking at, where we can be an innovation crucible, where we can certainly develop new methods of delivery, which they can actually even take to Africa or wherever else. So we ought to be looking at that, and partnerships should be most welcome in that. Remember, partnerships are not only in setting up new institutions. Partnerships are also very important for innovations in health services and health service delivery. So operational research is a very important area. Therefore, the whole area of health system research or implementation science, as it's now being called, is going to be absolutely important. Previously, the word health system used to be dismissed, and even people like Mr. Bill Gates used to say, "What is health system?" I don't understand what health system is. It used to be seen as a black box that nobody could define. But now it is seen as a switch box, in which is multi-junction switch box, in which it connects multiple programs and brings in greater convergence and efficiency. And now the whole world is talking about health system strengthening, including the Gates Foundation. So you have to be able to look at operational research. So that is an area you should collaborate with the government. And in terms of training for public health, we ought to be able to look at developing a very competent health workforce. Mr. Desiraju said people are now, 95% of the people trained in the All India Institute of Speech have gone abroad. We ought to be able to set up conditions so that the people we train are not only incentivized to stay back, but we ought to be able to produce numbers that can also meet the global demand, if there's a global demand. Not at the cost of India, but as an extension of what we can produce for our own needs. Because with the young population coming up, we will have to produce workforce not only for India, but workforce for the world. There's a tremendous opportunity there. So that requires, again, careful planning and collaboration. So this is the kind of blueprint that we ought to be really looking at. And we also ought to be looking at ourselves as a global technical resource center. If Africa requires technical support in various areas, we ought to be able to provide the technical support. Europe and America are too costly. In fact, I've just come back from a meeting in Canada in which they were talking about developing and developed countries. I said, you must recognize that there are emerging economies among the developing countries and there are submerging economies among the developed countries. We're all in the same boat. So we have to sail together. So we ought to be able to share our resources very clearly with all countries across the world. But of course, we must serve ourselves first. So these are areas in which I believe the industry and the government can be very productive partners, but they must take into account all other sectors of society. Because unless you actually have a consultative process in which everybody feels comfortable with both the process and the product, and the purpose of the process and the product, you're going to have critics all over the place. And that criticism is going to divert you, is going to distract you, and is going to ultimately weaken you. So whatever process has to take place has to be in a very transparent manner that gets endorsement of multiple stakeholders. Of course, you cannot satisfy everybody, but if you can satisfy most of the people, then you can silence your critics. But the important thing is to have, as I said, a partnership with the public purpose. Thank you.